This video is going to look at a few of the draw tools in AutoCAD. First we'll start with the most basic one, the line command on the Home tab. When we start the line command, we can see the prompt near our cursor. AutoCAD is telling us to specify the first point. We can see the X and the Y coordinates. Oftentimes when we start a floor plan, we'll want to make sure that some point on the perimeter of the building, usually somewhere in the lower left, is 0, 0. For now we're just going to arbitrarily pick a point on the screen, and as we move our cursor we can see a length and an angle is being prompted. So we could go ahead and type a length right now. We see the 1 foot 11 and 9/16 is highlighted. So if we were to start typing, we'd be specifying a new length. We could also press the tab key and toggle over into the angle, which currently happens to be 24 degrees. I'll just go ahead and click a second point on the screen arbitrarily, and then if we wanted to continue drawing lines we could. Otherwise, in this case, we'll press escape and exit the line command. If we select this line that we just drew by picking two arbitrary points and then right click and select properties, we'll notice that even though we arbitrarily picked points on the screen, this line still has a very precise length and angle. So the line is 5 foot 4 3/4 and the angle is 22 degrees. We'll also notice the delta X and the delta Y tell us the difference both horizontally and vertically between the start and end points. This gives us an idea actually that the area that we're currently drawing in is about 5.5 feet by 2 feet. If we were wanting to draw something larger than that, we'd have to zoom out. Sometimes we have to draw a line off the screen, so if we were to start the line command, and notice we can leave the properties palette open while we're working in AutoCAD, we could draw a line, pick an arbitrary point, and then as we move our cursor we can see it snap to the horizontal or snap to the vertical. That's part of polar tracking. That allows us to easily draw perfectly orthogonal floor plans, which is important. So I pick my first point, I start heading to the right, snapped to the horizontal, and then I could just type 100 and then the foot symbol and press enter. Now I'll remember that AutoCAD wants to keep drawing lines, so I'm going to press escape, and then we can double click our wheel button on the mouse, and that zooms us out so that we can see the entire drawing. Now I'm in a much larger area that is at least 100 feet wide and a certain distance high. I can select that line and hit the delete key on the keyboard if I want to erase it. I can either double click my wheel button, or on the navigation bar on the right I can click the drop down and select zoom previous to get back to the exact area that I was previously. So another quick look at the line command. We pick an arbitrary point to start, and then if we wanted to type a specific length like 1 foot 4, I just type the foot symbol and 4 without a dash, and I do not have to provide the inch symbol in this case. Then I can press tab, and you'll notice the 1 foot 4 now is a locked dimension, so I could now arbitrarily pick an angle if I wanted to. It should be pointed out that in AutoCAD, seeing as it's such a precise drawing tool, it's virtually impossible to pick your exact length and angle without bumping your mouse a little bit as you're pushing the button and getting some fraction of a length rather than getting exactly what you want. So normally it's best to type the length and angle specifically. So in this case, if I wanted a 30-degree angle, I'd just type 30. I could press tab if I wanted to get back to the length and change it, and you could keep pressing tab to get back and forth between the length and the angle. Once you're done, you hit enter, and then you can continue to draw lines, or you could press escape. Next we'll take a look at the circle command. So on the Home tab we select the circle tool. we see the prompt near our cursor says specify center point for circle. So with our object snaps turned on, when we move our cursor near the end point of a line, we see the end point snap show up. So when we see that snap and we click, we know that the center of the circle is going to be perfectly aligned with the end point of that line. As we move our cursor now, we see the radius showing up. If we wanted to enter the diameter, we notice down at the command window we could type D and enter, or click right on that word diameter, and then AutoCAD would switch to allow us to enter the diameter. So if we wanted a 3-inch radius, we'd just type 3 and enter. Without typing a foot or an inch symbol, AutoCAD assumes that we're talking about inches. So 3 and enter. If I select that circle with the properties palette still open, or if we closed it, we select the circle and then right click and select properties. We can see the radius of 3 inches, the diameter of 6 inches, and then we also see some information such as circumference and area. So you'll notice those can actually be edited, which would change the radius and diameter, of course. And then there's some information in these properties palettes that are grayed out, that are just derived information that can't be edited. So we'll hit escape to unselect that circle. There are other ways of specifying circles if we click the down arrow. Most of those options are somewhat straightforward. The 2-point option, we just specify 1 point, and I'll click perpendicular here, specify the 2nd point, and that's how we just drew that circle. We'll take a moment to talk about how we can select elements in AutoCAD. So if we just click on an element, as we've already done, we highlight one item. If we continue to click items, we will add to the current selection set. AutoCAD highlights the elements in blue so that we know that they are selected. So this is an additive process. Some programs you have to hold the control key to continue to select things. That's not so in AutoCAD. To clear the selection, we simply hit the escape key on the keyboard. If we want to select several things at once, we can use a window. So if we click and let go of the mouse button, that starts a selection window. When we go from left to right, that's going to do a window, and only things completely within the window are selected. So in this case, we'll only be selecting the circle and the shorter line. So I go ahead and click my 2nd point, and those 2 items are selected. I'll hit escape to clear that selection. Now if I click and go from right to left, so I'm clicking the button and letting go, not dragging, this is called a crossing window. Anything that's completely within the window or crosses through it is also selected. So in this case we've selected the 2 lines and the circle. I'll hit escape. Now the last scenario for selection is to click and drag the mouse. And this allows us to create a very particular selection window. This is called a lasso selection, and if we go from left to right, it's only going to select things completely within. If we go from right to left, it'll do the crossing scenario. So in this case, we've very particularly selected the circle and the line, and perhaps in a more complex drawing there'd be dimensions and notes and other graphics around this that we didn't want to select. If we want to remove something from the selection, we can hold down the Shift key and then click. So we could start out by selecting a large area and then just remove a few items that were not needed, and then we could then move or edit or delete that selection. We can use a combination of any of the selection features we just looked at. So we could do a crossing window, we could click individually, We could do a window selection, and using those different methods we've just selected all the elements in the drawing. Then we could come in and start removing items by holding down the Shift key. So once we've selected items, we can then move them, rotate them, do any of the modify commands, or delete the selected items by hitting the delete key on the keyboard. The last couple of draw tools that we'll look at quickly are the arc tool and the rectangle tool. So if we just simply click on the arc tool, specify start point of arc, we can click some arbitrary point, and then specify second point. So that's the point at which the arc will pass through. So now it wants us to specify the last point. So that's one way of drawing an arc. If we click the down arrow on the split button for the arc tool, we see that there are several different ways in which we can draw an arc. Start, end, and direction is another one. So if we click that option, let's say we pick the start at the end of this line, the end at a point perpendicular from our first pick, and then the direction is which way the arc goes. Let's take a quick look at the rectangle tool as well. So if we pick our start point on the screen and then we start moving to the right, we can see the width and the height of the rectangle. If I want this to be something very specific, I could type 8 and then tab to get over to the other field, and then 4, and then enter. I have an 8" by 4" rectangle. Now I can verify this. When you're starting to use AutoCAD, it's good to verify that what you have drawn is accurate. So on the Home tab we have this measure tool. When we click on that, we can pick 2 points, so you can see how the snaps are working here as well. So it tells us that's 8 inches. I can continue to select additional distances. I'll pick this distance option here that showed up on the screen, and that's 4 inches. So let me hit escape. If we're done using the distance or the measure tool, we can hit escape. Let's pick measure one more time and notice what happens if we pick a diagonal across the two. So we see both the delta x and the delta y show up, so that one distance command actually showed me both dimensions because I picked a distance at an angle. So I'll hit escape to close all of that. And that's a quick look at some of the draw tools in AutoCAD.